Are you looking to buy a new or used iPad, but you're confused about the different models, the different specs, the different sizes? Well, you've come to the right place because in this video, I'm giving you my complete guide to buying an iPad in 2024. Let's go. Hi, my name is Pete Johns, and for nearly a decade now, I've been helping folks just like you choose the right iPad for them to create music, create video, or just use as their daily device. Like the guide over on the website, we're doing this in 4 sections, and those are time-stamped in the description if you want to jump around. We're going to cover the best performance iPads, the best all-round iPads, and the best budget models. We're then going to do a deep dive into all the things you need to consider, such as storage, screen size, memory, and everything else. There are also links to all of the iPads I recommend in this video in the description. Those are affiliate links, so if you do make a purchase, you pay the same price, but they break off a small chunk and send it my way. Let's start with the performance category. This is if you're a power user and you need the latest and greatest. The 3 I've selected here are the iPad Pro M4 from 2024, the previous model of iPad Pro with the M2 chip, and the iPad Air with the M2, the brand new model as well. Let's go through each of these. Now, all of these come in both 11-inch and 12.9 or 13-inch screens. The brand new Pro M4 starts at $12.99, whereas the M2 iPad Air starts from $7.99. The previous generation iPad Pro, you can't buy it new anymore, but the links down below will take you to where you can check out some refurbished models because you can get some great buys on some secondhand gear. All of these are rocking the M2 or the M4 chip. This is Apple's new silicon where everything is integrated. They go lightning fast, really great for your audio and video creation. The iPad Pro models have Thunderbolt, so that's a faster version of the USB-C connector that the iPad Air uses. They also have Face ID as opposed to the Touch ID. The screen on the iPad Pros is also a little bit better than that on the iPad Air if that's something you care about. Here's a look at the options you have for capacity. This is the amount of storage you have. I recommend at least 512 gigabytes if you're going for a Pro or an Air model, but you can go up to 1 or 2 terabytes as well if you want some extra storage. For those who care about performance, here's all the numbers that matter. These are the chips on board the M4 and the M2 chips. So the main difference here is the number of cores of both the efficiency and the performance cores you're getting, as well as the cores for the GPU. The other thing that you need to consider is the RAM or random access memory. You get 8 gigabytes on the models up to 512 gigs of storage, and you get 16 gigabytes on the 1 and 2 terabyte models of the iPad Pro. So if you do want the absolute best and best performance, you will want to go with a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte iPad Pro. The only final choice you have here if you're selecting a performance iPad is to choose your color, gray or silver, or you can get a bit more colorful with the iPad Air and choose your size of screen. It's a personal preference thing. If you want more screen real estate, but maybe sacrifice a bit on portability, you go the 13-inch. If you want something a bit more portable, the 11-inch is great as well. Next up are my picks for a more everyday iPad. If you're looking for a little more value, but you still want a lot of power, this is what I recommend. We've got the iPad Pro 5th generation, that's the M1 model. We've got the iPad Air 5th generation, also with the M1, and the iPad 10th generation, the current version of the standard iPad. Now, as you can see here, the standard iPad is the only one you can buy new from Apple right now, but check out the links below because you can pick up some great deals on these older, from just a few years ago, iPad Pros and Airs. Here's your overview. The iPad Pro is available in the 12.9 and the 11-inch, whereas the Air and the 10th gen are both 10.9-inch liquid retina displays. The Pro and Air are both running Apple's M1. That's the first system on a chip, the first Apple silicon that they released. It still is an amazing chip. I use it in my Mac. It does a great job. The A14 is on your vanilla iPad. Once again, all these models use your USB Type-C connector, with that Pro having the speed of Thunderbolt if you've got high-speed drives or other peripherals you want to connect. The Pro uses uses Face ID, whereas the other two use the top button for Touch ID to log on. Here's a look at the capacity. So your Pro starts at 128 gigabytes and goes all the way to 2 terabytes, whereas your Air and your standard iPads are either 64 or 256. I highly recommend 256 if you're doing anything with audio or video. You'll quickly run out of storage if you go for a 64 gigabyte iPad in 2024. And here's the processor information for the geekier among us like me. You got the Apple M1 chip there. You can see you got 8-core CPU, 8-core GPU, 16-core neural engine. And once again, if you want the 16 gigabytes of RAM, you need to go for the 1 or 2 terabyte model. If you go for a lower storage capacity, you'll get 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is still quite a lot for the average user. 8 gigabytes of RAM also on the iPad Air. And then your 10th generation, it's running a lower level chip. So if you don't need all the bells and whistles, the standard iPad is actually a great deal. The Pro model comes in grey or silver, and you can choose between 12.9 or 11 inch. You get some more colors and variety with the Air and the iPad 10th generation. So if you're looking for something for everyday use, but you still want a bit of oomph under the hood, these are some great iPads to check out. If you're buying your first iPad, you just want to check out what it's all about, or you're getting an iPad for the family or the kids, these are the ones to take a look at. You've got the iPad Pro from 2020, the 4th generation, the iPad Mini, 6th generation, and the iPad 9th gen. Now, the iPad Mini is the only one that's a current model here. That's from $499 new. You can pick it up secondhand or refurbished as well. And there's also some fabulous deals on these two because they've been around a while. 4 years is old in iPad terms. So you can pick up some great refurbished and used models. Links in the description. As you know by now, if you've watched the other sections, your Pro comes in 11 inch or 12.9 inch models. You've got the Mini, which is your smaller device, 8.3 inch screen on that one, and a 10.2 inch screen on your iPad. Here's where you start seeing why you're going to pay less for these. The power and the performance is not up to the ones that we looked at in the other sections, but you still get some really good bang for your buck here. The A12Z or Z processor on the iPad Pro, I own one. I still use it. It is still fabulous. The A15 Bionic, that's the same one that's in the iPhone 14. That's a great chip to use in the iPad Pro 6th gen. And you've got the A13 in your iPad, which for the price, you can pick these up for like $100, $200 is still a great deal on a great iPad. Connectivity-wise, you've got USB-C on both the iPad Pro and the iPad Mini, and Lightning. Yes, it's the last iPad I recommend that has a Lightning connector is the 9th generation iPad. That's the connector you'll use with your iPhone. Can be handy if you've got a bunch of other devices, but there's some limitations in terms of connecting it up to audio interfaces, microphones, and the like. So if you're an audio person, I'd recommend leaning towards an iPad with a USB-C connector these days. We have less options with capacity here. The Pro goes from 128 up to 1 terabyte, and then you've got those 64 or 256 gigabyte models with the Mini and the iPad. I recommend the 256, 64 if you really have to. Say it's an iPad you're giving to a kid for the first time and they're just going to download apps and use web browsing, 64 is okay. But if you, as soon as you start to do anything audio or video related, you're going to quickly run out of room. And there's the nerd details with your chip. Again, you see that these are cut down versions. These are lower performance chips over what we've seen in the performance and the everyday iPads. But for your everyday stuff, if you're rocking GarageBand and iMovie, you're still going to be able to do it. My kids use the iPad 9th and even 8th generations, and they still are able to do everything they need to do. So just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's nasty and doesn't mean it can't do what you want it to do when it comes to iPads. And finally, you select your size, or in the case of the Mini and the iPad, you have the size, you select your color, and you go ahead and pick one up. And remember, you can buy the Mini new. The other two are no longer sold as new, but if you go to the Apple store, they'll often have refurbished versions of older iPads, or again, you can check the Amazon and eBay links that I have in the description of this video. Welcome to the deep dive section. This is where I'm going to give you more information about all the things things you need to consider once you've chosen your model around your screen size, your storage, and other factors as well. Number one is your storage, because this is the thing that's going to frustrate you if you don't get enough. As I've mentioned previously in the video, 256 gigabytes is what I recommend as a minimum in 2024. 512 or 1 or 2 terabytes if you can swing it. But the problem is, if you go 64 or 128, you're going to quickly fill that up with large video files and audio files, and it's going to become frustrating as you have to offload files and delete files just to do what you want with your iPad. Screen size is a personal choice thing, but here's a few things to keep in mind. 13 inches is going to be larger. It's going to give you more screen real estate if you're using things like video editing and creating music in Logic Pro or GarageBand. It's going to give you more room and more space to do that. But the trade-off is going to be you're going to have a larger thing to carry around with you. It's not going to slip in your backpack as easily if you go the larger screen size. 11 inch or the 10 to 11 inch models in the middle there, they give you kind of a bit of a best of both worlds. You get a larger screen to be able to do all the things you need to do, but they are much more portable. So I find that an 11-inch iPad, just sliding it into my backpack and taking it with me, it's kind of the perfect size for doing that. There are some folks who love the smaller size of the iPad mini, the 8.3-inch screen of an iPad mini. I find it's a little small for the big chunky fingers that I have to do what I need to do, but if you've got kids or family members, yeah, the iPad mini has a great range of features for a good price, and it's super compact and portable to throw in your bag and go for it. What do you need to know about processors, about the chip that these iPads use? Do you need to be a giant nerd or a geek and find out all the information? No, not really. It's kind of simple these days. The M4 is the latest and greatest. That's going to be the fastest, the most powerful processor. The M2 and the M1 are still fabulous. They're still part of Apple's new system on a chip silicon that is going to run beautifully. The A15, 14, 13, 12, they kind of go backwards from there. So yeah, the higher the number with that A, usually the better performance you are going to get. And if it's got Pro in it, it's going to usually have a faster chip. Air's kind of the second fastest, and your generic iPad's the third. The iPad mini kind of sits somewhere in the middle there. It's a bit weird, but you don't need to worry too much about the chip or the processor or the performance, as long as you have listened to what I said in the other sections about selecting the right iPad for you. Unless you are a power user, in that case, you will want to make a few specific selections, and that is, if you're getting the brand new iPad Pro, you'll need the one with the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte storage, because that has slightly better processing power, as well as 16 gigabytes of RAM, that's random access memory, instead of 8 gigabytes. So if you want the best of the best and you want to future-proof yourself, it's not just about the storage. You may want to get those higher end storage sizes to make sure that you've got the better processors and better memory as well. Connectivity, or the way you plug your things into your iPad. It used to be a much bigger issue because we had some iPads with Lightning and some with USB-C. Thankfully, every new iPad being sold now has a USB Type-C connector. That's the sort of connection you use with your Android phones, your laptop computers. Pretty much everything in 2024 uses USB-C. So thankfully, you don't really have to think about this. The only thing you need to consider is if you need Thunderbolt. And if you need Thunderbolt, you probably know it. But all Thunderbolt is a faster version of USB Type-C. So if you've got SSD, so some high-speed drives, or some peripherals, some gear that needs the speed of Thunderbolt, you will need an iPad Pro to be able to plug those in and get the maximum speed and performance out of your devices. And if you are at the budget end, is it really that bad to have Lightning? No, not really. I still use Lightning for my iPhones and for a bunch of older iPads. It's still usable, it just doesn't have the flexibility that USB-C has. So you're still okay with Lightning, but USB-C is just much easier. And something that won't matter for most people, but might for you, is how you actually get into your device. So most of your Pros, in fact, all of the current models, use Face ID. So that's like you use on your phone. You flick it up, it looks at your face, it identifies you. Your Airs and your minis and your regular iPads use Touch ID. On the newer models, it's on the top button. So you grab your iPad, you touch the top button, and it identifies you. So if you really hate Face ID for some reason, don't get an iPad Pro. And if you really don't want to use the Touch ID on a button, do get an iPad Pro. And if you've been watching this video and you've been wondering how I've been doing these cool comparisons between different models, all you need to do is go to the Apple webpage, tap on iPad, and then click on compare. And you can compare any 3 models of iPad from the current or even older generations of iPads and check them out side by side. A really great tool if you're making that final decision on which iPad to buy. I hope this makes it easy for you to buy your next iPad. Don't forget, we've got links down in the description, including my complete iPad buyer's guide at studiolivetoday.com/iPad. If you've got any further questions or comments, please leave those in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.